Okay. Hi everyone. Welcome to the NBTI. Today we have Jordan Gray, and he is the External Relations Manager for the Turtle Survival Alliance. Um, it's his 8-year anniversary. Yay today, especially today. If you have any questions, you can put them in the Q&A, but we are gonna be answering them towards the end. And we can start now.
All right. Thank you all so much. Wherever you are in the world, whether it's evening, whether it's morning, whether it's afternoon, it's turtle time. It's my favorite time. I hope this is going to be your favorite time of the day as well, because we are going to explore the world of turtles, but we're going to do it differently this year. So I've been fortunate enough to be invited to be a presenter for the National Biodiversity Teach-In for the last several years. And I explore many topics from rewilding to various conservation projects to combating wildlife trafficking. But what I want to do this year was introduce you specifically to turtles who have different conservation stories, different backgrounds, because there are so many different types of turtles and tortoises all around the world. In fact, there are 479 different types of turtles and tortoises. Most people don't know that. We might think of box turtles or soft-shell turtles or snapping turtles, or for many, when we think of turtles, we think of marine turtles or sea turtles. So there are 7 types of marine turtles. That means that there's 472 other types of turtles and tortoises all around the world, and all who are very deserving of our attention, our love, and our efforts to ensure that they have a place on this world um, for generations and generations to come. And when I say that, I mean, I'm talking about an animal who has lived on this planet for more than 260 million years. That's a time frame that us as humans can barely even fathom. You know, we think of okay, oh, 5 years ago I was here, or 10 years ago, or we think back, oh, 100 years ago, oh, that was a long time ago. But for turtles and tortoises, millions and millions and millions of years they have lived on this planet. But now they are going through an existential crisis, and that is that humans are their greatest threat to survival. Of the 357 species of turtle and tortoise on Earth, about 60% of them right now are threatened with extinction. And that's more than any other order of vertebrate on Earth. So, turtles and tortoises, as much as we love them, as much as we feel like they'll always be around, that really isn't the case. These are animals that need our conservation attention right now to ensure that they continue to live for the next million or more years. So, again, I brought many different turtles with me today that I'm going to introduce you to, tell you their stories, give you their conservation backgrounds, and what Turtle Survival Alliance does to help them and species like them. And then we'll get a chance to do a Q&A at the end, so that if you have any specific questions about, say, the turtle I bring up, or just turtles and tortoises in general, you have an opportunity to do that, because I love talking about turtles. I love answering your questions, and I want you all to be inspired. I want, after today, you to go out. I would just take a trek in the woods, go into a swamp, dive in a lake, look for turtles, enjoy the fact that they are here on our planet. They live across the world. There's very few places in the world, actually, that does not have turtles. Antarctica, for instance. Yeah, they have penguins, but they don't have turtles. So, the first turtle I'm going to introduce to you today is named Cyclone. And Cyclone is a Vietnamese three-striped box turtle. Now, let me prepare you. This may be the only time in your life that you get to see this species of turtle. That's how rare it is. It is one of the most endangered turtles in the world. So let me get Cyclone real quick. All right, here he is. Hi, Cyclone. So this is Cyclone. He is a Vietnamese three-striped box turtle, and the reason that they're called that is it's kind of difficult to see on the camera, but they have three dark stripes running down the shell. They have a beautiful, and I'll hold them up to the camera here. They have the beautiful kind of salmon color, orangey pink color, and some yellows on their head. This species is native to Vietnam, southern China, and Laos, and they're primarily an aquatic species. So here in the United States, where I live, box turtles are typically thought of as terrestrial or land-dwelling turtles. But for these Asian box turtles, many of them are either highly aquatic or entirely aquatic. So Cyclone here lives in a semi-aquatic habitat where he spends most of his time in water. So why is this turtle so endangered? Well, this turtle here, the species, for decades has been relentlessly hunted primarily for food, pets, and traditional Chinese medicine. It's hard for us to even think of looking at this turtle and knowing that they will take the animal's body parts and make them into medicine, specifically a kind of jelly that called turtle jelly that is supposed to treat different ailments. Now, the science is not out there showing that they actually do treat the ailments, but that is very much part of the folklore within this traditional medicine trade. Again, they're also common, they've been and continue to be commonly eaten. So there are about 500 of these animals left in the wild, maybe not even that many. Most of them are now in captivity. Interestingly enough, this species here is bred by the tens of thousands in turtle farms in China for use, again, as food, pets, and traditional Chinese medicine. But the Turtle Survival Alliance is working to maintain breeding colonies using distinct genetic lineages of this turtle to preserve it here on Earth. One of the difficult things is that the sister species to this, the Chinese three-striped box turtle, also known as the golden coin turtle, has been heavily hybridized in captivity. And what happens when these animals are hybridized is that it creates genetic mixing. It creates polluted genetics, we call it. So even though there's tens of thousands of them in these farms, there's very few of them that actually have the pure genetics of the species. So it's a priority for Turtle Survival Alliance and our partners to be able to find genetically pure lineages of this animal so that we can create conservation breeding programs for their preservation. So that is Cyclone, a really, really neat turtle. He was born at our Turtle Survival Center, which is an ARC, really, for endangered turtle species. It's about 50 minutes north of Charleston, South Carolina, and it harbors 27 of the world's most endangered turtles and tortoises. And I use the word ARC. It really is that. We have conservation breeding programs for species that are functionally extinct in the wild, presumed extinct in the wild, and others that are rapidly on the pace towards extinction in the wild. So it is critically important that we be able to maintain lineages of these turtles in such conservation facilities so that when and where possible, we can reintroduce them back into the wild into protected sanctuaries. So let's move on to our next turtle. And Cyclone says goodbye. All right, this next turtle, he's a really cool guy, kind of spastic. This little guy is called a yellow blotched map turtle. And he looks small. You'd think he was only about a year old or so, but this is actually an adult male for the species. And it's mind-blowing for most people because they're like, wait a minute, an adult turtle that small? He's just under 4 inches in length. And if I'm going to hold him up close to the camera, if you can see these ridges on his shell, this species and others like it are commonly referred to as sawbacks, and you can see why. This keel along the vertebral scutes, we call them, of the shell looks like a saw. And if I turn him this way, you can see these very, very serrated edges of the shell. Now, these are called marginal scutes. And actually, that brings me to a good opportunity to talk about turtle morphology. So, morphology is the characteristics of a species, whether that be flora or fauna, plant or animal. So, for turtles, their top shell is called a carapace. Their bottom shell is called a plastron. And their entire plastron and carapace are covered in what we call scutes. And these scutes are made of keratin, the same product that creates our fingernails, our skin, our hair. That's all keratin. So you can really think of this turtle as covered in little fingernails. So along the top of the turtle, where that saw is, we have scutes called vertebral or central scutes. Along the sides, right next to the vertebral or central scutes, we have what are called lateral or pleural scutes. And then finally, along the edges of the shell, these are called marginal scutes. And I'm going to show you something when I get to another turtle of why marginal scutes actually come in very handy for turtle research and conservation. So let's go back to this turtle specifically. So Spike Magoo here, that's his full name, by the way, Spike Magoo. It's on his birth certificate. Spike Magoo was hatched in captivity by a friend of mine who works with another turtle conservation organization. And he was donated to us specifically to use as a outreach animal, an educational ambassador. And this species is listed on the United States Endangered Species Act. They are protected at the federal level. And the main reason for that is because populations of this species who only live in Mississippi, by the way, have been severely affected by what we think of as a simple human act, but that has had major biological ramifications. And that act is known as damming, putting dams in rivers. Now, if you've learned about things like salmon or mussels or now turtles, a lot of these aquatic animals that evolved in pretty fast, free-flowing rivers don't do so well in impoundments in these rivers created by the dams. And so during the Industrial Revolution in the early 1900s, dams were frequently put in throughout rivers in the United States, especially in the southeastern United States, for hydroelectric hydroelectric power. Well, what this did is it created these deep water, colder systems in which the water is much more stagnant, it's not free flowing, and animals like the yellow blotch map turtle don't thrive in those conditions. And not only that, but their food source doesn't thrive in those conditions. Females of this species love to eat things like mollusks, so clams, mussels, and the males here also like to eat small invertebrates as well. But those invertebrates, just like the turtle, evolved for a flowing system, a nice winding river system in which they're able to feed, they're able to bask. And by damming those, it creates an environment that's not optimal. And over time, you see populations of turtles like this and their food sources plummet. And so they were eventually put on the Endangered Species Act. One thing I do also, final note here, I want you all to see this. Can you all see his foot? I'll hold it up close to the camera. If you can see those really, really long claws, males of this species and numerous other species of turtle, not all, have these long sword-like claws on their front feet. And the reason for that, it's not for grabbing food, it's not for attacking predators. They are not ninja turtles. These are not sais or katana swords. What these are for is actually courtship rituals to entice the female turtles to breed. And what they will do, and if you've ever seen it, or go look it up after this, it's really funny to watch. They will actually use these claws to tickle the face of the female, just like this, uh, as a courtship ritual. It's really fun to watch, but it's an amazing evolutionary process that these turtles have undergone to make them more fit for reproduction. All right, so say goodbye to Spike Magoo, the yellow blotch map turtle. Again, with any of these turtles during the Q&A, we can get back to it and hopefully answer your questions about it. But we're going to move on to another turtle. Okay, so this turtle brings up a whole different subject, and that's the subject of wildlife trafficking. One of the major reasons that turtles and tortoises are facing extinction right now is because of collection for the food, pet, and traditional medicine trades. So a lot of work has been done, especially in the past 2 decades, to protect turtles from over collection from the wild. And even though there are protections at state and federal levels, turtles still get poached and illegally trafficked to pet or food markets around the world. And the United States is one of those countries in which people do buy illegally traded turtles. So this turtle here, look at that face. He's an amazing, amazing turtle. His face almost looks like Skeletor or like the night before Christmas. Um, this is a three-toed box turtle, and his name is Trident. And Trident was poached out of Oklahoma, where this species is native, and was confiscated at JFK International Airport in New York. JFK International Airport is a major hub of wildlife trafficking. So is Chicago O'Hare, which many of you in the U-46 program may very well know. These major airports are oftentimes the last exit point before these turtles are shipped, oftentimes in deplorable conditions, to pet markets around the world. So special wildlife agents and inspections agents inspect parcels at these different ports. And an airport is a form of a port, but there's also shipping ports as well, to look for wildlife that is being illegally traded. And that might be turtles, that might be eels, that might be fish, um, parts of elephants and rhinoceros, tiger parts. There's all sorts of animals and plants that are illegally traded every day and smuggled via airplane, via boat, or via vehicle. That sounds weird, via vehicle, to different destinations. Luckily, Trident here was intercepted by law enforcement, and he was placed at a facility that is run by a friend of mine in New Jersey. And then Trident came to me to use again as an educational ambassador. So Trident specifically gives us the opportunity to talk about wildlife trafficking and the detrimental impacts it has on not just turtles, but again, many species of flora and fauna, plants and animals. So let's talk a little bit about Trident himself. So he is a male. He has this, again, gorgeous coloration on his face and limbs. Now, the three-toed box turtle is named as such because, and I'll try to hold it up to the camera here. Hey, Trident, don't you want to show your feet? This species specifically has three toes on its hind foot. Most box turtles have four toes on their hind feet. However, some will also have three toes besides the three-toed box turtle. We see Florida box turtles with three toes. We see Eastern box turtles with three toes and Gulf Coast box turtles with three toes. So it can happen, but that's the defining characteristic of this species of turtle. Now you'll notice that they have a very rather bland olivey brown green coloration to the shell and a very plain plastron, again, the bottom shell. That is characteristic of the three-toed box turtle. When we look at our other species of box turtle that live in the United States, they're typically modeled with yellows, tans, browns, oranges, reds. But for this guy here, he has very, very diagnostic characteristics of a three-toed box turtle. All right. Again, we can get back to him later if you want. Oh, let's do one good close-up. Look at that face. Just exceptional coloration. And it really does look like kind of like a Halloween mask that he's wearing. So Trident is a really neat animal and a great ambassador to be able to talk about wildlife trafficking. All right, so for our next turtle, we are going to stay in the world of North American box turtles, but we're going to talk about a very different subject. So the turtle that we're going to talk about now is Gary. So Gary here is a Gulf Coast box turtle. And one thing that you might be able to quickly see about Gary is that he has fractures on his shell. I'll turn him around here and you can see where his shell is fractured. So Gary is an adult male Gulf Coast box turtle. This species, aptly named, lives in a narrow strip along the Gulf Coast of the United States, from western Louisiana to western Florida. And Gary came to me via my friend who runs the Central Mississippi Turtle Rescue because he was hit by a car. Now, I didn't rehabilitate Gary. That's what my friend there at Central Mississippi Turtle Rescue did. But the important thing to bring up about Gary is, well, he was hit by a car. He's well healed. He is rehabilitated, so why isn't he back in the wild? So turtles and tortoises have very, very specific home ranges. It's really important when you come across a turtle to not move it to a different area. You might find it while walking on a trail in the woods, and you think, oh, well, I know this beautiful state park or national wildlife refuge or something like that, that turtle would probably be happier in. Unfortunately, that's not really the case. Think about it this way. Turtles lay their eggs either underground or in leaf litter, or even for some turtles in tropical areas, they'll lay it right along the water line. So for the Gulf Coast box turtle, though, the female digs a nest with her hind feet, deposits the eggs, covers it back up, and then the eggs incubate underground. So the turtle has now started its life as an embryo underground. Then, about 2 to 3 months later, they hatch. They make their way up out of the ground of the nest, and they're only about an inch. Tiny, tiny little box turtles. Okay, it's amazing to think of. So here's 1 inch. Look at Gary now. Think about that tiny turtle and the world that it lives in. So they start by creating their own little niche within this greater world. And for them to be able to survive, being that small, they live in what we call these micro habitats, just little tiny areas of the forest or swamplands that they can feel protected, find food, find all the necessary resources, and evade predators. And then they grow in that tiny little niche that they have created in the forest. And every year they grow a little larger, they grow a little larger. And as they grow, they expand their home range that they've been building ever since they were an embryo in that egg. So if you think about it, imagine you're walking down the street one day and somebody just says, oh, well, they're walking down the street. Wouldn't they rather just be walking down the street in New York City? It's so exciting. There's so many things to do in New York City. They could go to Times Square. They could go to a Taylor Swift concert. They could go to a New York Rangers hockey game. Well, that's your choice to go to New York City, right? Well, same thing for a turtle. You wouldn't want to be picked up and then just placed in New York City with nowhere to go, no home, no friends, no family. Same thing for turtles. It's important that we leave them in the habitats in which they have grown up in because they have this very, very strong, what we call site fidelity. All that being said, that is why Gary couldn't be released. Because when he was dropped off at the rescue after being hit by a car, they didn't leave information about where he had been hit by a car. So it could have been anywhere in the state of Mississippi in their range that he was hit. And we wouldn't want to release him into an area that he's not familiar with because unfortunately, in many cases, the turtles will feel completely out of place. Yeah, we see it as woods. We see it as swamps. We see it as, oh, that looks like great turtle habitat. But again, that's not that turtle's home. So they can oftentimes wander feeling lost. I've heard of turtles wandering for years just to get back to where they came from. I've even seen turtles, get this, I've seen turtles released into areas and with radio transmitters put on them by biologists find that they travel over 50 miles to get back to where they actually originally came from. I've seen other turtles travel hundreds of miles just to get back to where they came from. So all of that to say is if you find a turtle in the wild, leave it where it is. If you don't know what to do, maybe it's a dangerous situation. Maybe the turtle's crossing a road, but there's a movie theater on the other side. Yeah, likely the turtle wasn't going to see the new Sonic the Hedgehog movie. They were probably going to look if there's any good habitat over there. But because humanity continues to eat up the lands and the waters used by turtles and tortoises, we are reducing the amount of habitat they have. So even though what used to be on the other side of the road might have been part of their home range, well, maybe it's now a Lowe's or a Home Depot or a Walmart or a housing community. So in those situations, it's best to contact your state or federal or provincial agency to figure out what is best to do. Or you can contact Turtle Survival Alliance. I deal with those kind of questions all the time, helping people figure out specific scenarios for a turtle they found. The last thing that this brings up is the resilience of turtles. If you can imagine getting hit by a car and you're a turtle, that's about equivalent to a human being hit by a 100 ton train. Okay? If you are a human getting hit by a 100-ton train, there's it's a really high chance you're not going to survive. But turtles have this shell, and this shell has been their saving grace, their evolutionary advantage for millions of years. And even now, in the age in which they have to deal with cars, sometimes they can withstand being hit by a car. And it might fracture the shell, but that shell can heal. It can heal because it was brought into a veterinarian who can put the shell back together like Humpty Dumpty. Or in many cases, I have seen turtles where they have actually healed that shell naturally in the wild. And the reason for that is because it's bone. And bone, just like when we break a bone, heals naturally. There's ongoing processes which within our bones for healing. In fact, human bones, the bones you have now are not the same bone that you had when you were born. Our bones are constantly growing and recycling themselves so that you are basically getting new bone material every several years as you grow. And that's the same thing with turtles. All right, so say goodbye to Gary, and we'll move on to our next turtle. Oh, this is my favorite. He's my favorite. He is a crowd pleaser. So this turtle has a similar story to Gary. Um, this is Steve. And Steve is a North American wood turtle. And the North American wood turtle ranges in the northeastern United States, southeastern Canada, and the Great Lakes region. So they are a very, very cold hardy turtle. This turtle lives all the way up into Quebec and Nova Scotia. So they can deal with really, really cold temperatures. Steve here is a turtle that came from my North American wood turtle research population. Now, normally I would never take a turtle out of a population that I'm doing research on. But in 2020, we were going through the stream and we found Steve sitting on the side of the creek, and he was very, very light in weight, and he had a couple noticeable things about him. One, he had major fractures on his shell, just like Gary. Two, if you can look closely, he's missing both of his front feet. So Steve here had quite a rough go of it. Now, there's a couple hypotheses I have as to why there's both injuries on the animals, and I'll explain one. North American wood turtles live in these beautiful clear water streams and rivers of, again, the Northeast and the Great Lakes in southern Canada. And those areas are prime for agriculture. That is where when people were migrating to the United States and Canada, once just territories, um, most of the agriculture was set up in the floodplains of these streams and rivers where the wood turtle lives. And so for hundreds of years now, there's been hay operations, there's been corn, all sorts of things, apple orchards along the hills in the areas in which wood turtles live. So these turtles sadly encounter heavy machinery on a regular basis. Um, Sometimes they can avoid that heavy machinery, but in other cases, a cyclical a rotating hay machine will hit these turtles, or the large tires of those hay machines might run over the turtle. So that is likely what happened with Steve here. He was run over by heavy machinery, sustaining these major fractures. And you can see that it actually went right over Steve because he has compression fractures. So not just fractures on the top of his shell, but he has fractures on the bottom of his shell as well. So again, think of a huge machine, large tires running over Steve, basically causing such compression that it caused these major breaks in his shell. So then why is he missing both of his front feet? It likely wasn't due to that same event. What happens with wood turtles is that raccoons and otters will commonly feast on their legs. Otters are they are an apex predator of water environments, streams and rivers. And otters are a predator of wood turtles. They typically don't eat the whole turtle. They might just take a leg for a snack. It's like sadly and kind of morbidly, turtle legs are like the chicken wings for otters. And same thing with raccoons. Raccoons will take just a leg or maybe two legs. And turtles, being that they're very resilient, they're amazing at healing injuries. Steve's legs were already completely healed up when I found him. So one of the hypotheses I have is that Steve had already encountered the raccoon or otter. It had taken both of his front feet, and then maybe he didn't have the speed to get away from the heavy machinery as it was going, or maybe because he has this reduced mobility, he just so happened to be hanging out in an area that was optimal for him to be able to find food, to find warmth, to find shelter and water, but that is in the direct way of where heavy machinery comes through. The other possible hypothesis is that Steve was hit by that heavy machinery, and then in his state of healing, um, it was an opportune moment for a predator like a raccoon or an otter to be able to feast on his legs. And that's kind of, again, morbid to think about, feasting on his legs. But this is what turtles encounter in the wild. It is part of nature. What is not part of nature and the natural processes, however, is that animals like raccoons, skunks, foxes, crows, all of the populations of these animals are exploding due to humans. Why? Humans leave around a lot of trash, and those animals are opportunistic. They will gladly scavenge trash cans, trash dumps, litter thrown along the sides of the road or in streams. And because of that, we are effectively subsidizing their populations. We are providing conditions in which their populations can flourish. Not only that, humans have removed most of the large predators that once kept those populations in check. Throughout the eastern United States, the mountain lion or cougar is all but gone. Wolves that once ranged across the eastern United States are all but gone. Those predators once kept the populations of foxes and raccoons and skunks and other animals in check. So turtles have a lot to deal with. And Steve is a great example of not only everything that turtles have to deal with, but the resilience of turtles. Steve may look like he's rather handicapped, but you should see him. If I put him down on the ground, and I know I wouldn't be able to right now in this setting, Steve actually, he can truck. And when I do outreach events where there's a nice grassy lawn or something, we'll have a big group of people and everybody will want to see Steve in action. And you put Steve down and you would not even know that he was missing his front feet. You would not even know that he had been hit by these, multi-ton machinery. He just zooms across. And the great thing about it is when he does that, you normally get like applause from the entire crowd because it's just incredible to see what Steve has gone through, how he is healed, and how, as a resilient turtle, he is able to just keep on keeping on. So Steve is a favorite of mine. I hope you love him too. But let's get to the next turtle really quick. All right. This is going to be the last turtle I show you because I do want to make sure we have more than enough time for questions and answers. This turtle here should be very, very special to the U46 STEM program and the Northern Illinois area because it's a Blandings turtle. So this is Speckles. Speckles is a young male Blandings turtle. Blandings turtles have one of the most unique looks because one, they have this very serpentine or snake-like neck and head, but two, they have this absolutely beautiful dandelion yellow colored throat. And all Blandings turtles have that yellow throat. And so they're really easy to distinguish. If you're going by a marsh or a pond or a lake in the Great Lakes region of the United States and in some places in southern Canada and New England, and you're seeing all of these turtles basking on logs, you might see a 100 painted turtles basking. But then there'll be this turtle who just sticks out like a sore thumb because of that gorgeous yellow throat, and that's the Blandings turtle. Now, Blandings turtles, like the other turtles I've shown, are under a lot of threat right now. And they have been for the better part of a century. In the early part of the 1900s through the middle 1900s, Blandings turtles were captured by the thousands from the Great Lakes regions for food, for turtle soup. People would put traps into coves of Lake Michigan, Lake Erie, Lake Huron, you name it, to catch Blandings turtles. And they would catch them for food. So really not for pets or traditional Chinese medicine like we've talked about before, but for the food industry. The other thing is that Blandings turtles, like pretty much all turtles, have lost a significant amount of their habitat. These animals require very large tracts of land. And the reason that is because Blandings turtles are semi-aquatic and they will inhabit numerous types of aquatic and terrestrial habitats in one season. So if you think about, if you're in the northern Illinois area, if you think about the different county preserves, the forest preserves, those preserves try to incorporate lakes, ponds, marshes, swamps, and forested and meadow areas, because those are the types of habitats that turtles like the Blandings turtles needs to thrive. One week they might be in a lake basking on a log. The next week they might be in just a small, what we call vernal or ephemeral pool, munching on tadpoles or salamander larvae. The next week they might be in a swamp, just cruising through thick brush because they're looking for other Blandings turtles during the breeding season. Again, these turtles require a lot of space and varied habitats, all of which are becoming more and more imperiled. But something that's going on really, really cool in the northern Illinois area is Blanding turtle Head Start programs. And the zoos in Chicago, along with the forest preserves, and the University of Illinois are heavily involved in these projects. And what they do is they incubate Blanding turtle eggs, raise them at the Brookfield Zoo or Lincoln Park Zoo or other facilities, and then once they're a large enough size, actually about the size of speckles here, they release them into the wild. Now, these Head Start programs are an important conservation tool, but they're not the only tool. You can't just hatch turtles, raise turtles, release them and say, good luck, I hope you do well. It's really important to be able to combine these with long-term monitoring projects. So are the turtles surviving? Is the size that we're releasing them at the right size for optimal survivorship? Are they not just surviving, but are they reproducing? Are they laying eggs? Are they interacting with the native Blandings turtles that were there? Because the more and more we learn about turtles, the more we learn that they are actually quite social animals. One turtle will recognize another turtle in a population. They have population dynamics going on just like one does in high school. There's groups of people that hang out. They have similar interests. Turtles have similar places they like to hang out. So we're seeing whole entire social structures and, get this, verbal communication between turtles, actually audible sounds that the turtles make to communicate with each other. So the Blandings turtle is it's really a conservation success story that we're seeing in northern Illinois and other areas in their range. And I really suggest, if you're in the range of the Blandings turtle, to learn more, to see how you can get involved. Because if you look at speckles here, they're such a special and unique turtle, and they deserve, like every turtle and tortoise on Earth, our conservation attention. So with that being said, why don't we open it up to turtle and tortoise questions? I'll put speckles away. And if anybody wants me to bring out another turtle because there's a specific question about it, I'll be glad to bring it back out. So thank you for listening. Hope you all enjoy the work of Turtle Survival Alliance as we work in 17 countries across the world. And we're going to be adding a lot of new countries this year in 2025. So we're going to have the largest footprint on Earth for turtle and tortoise conservation, turtle conservation, and I know I'm really excited about it. So let's get to some questions.
Okay, we have a lot of questions. People were after like 30 minutes, there was like a bunch of questions popping. So okay.
Sure.
So the first one is, what makes turtles and tortoises different?
Like, what's the difference between them?
Yeah.
That's a great question. It comes up all the time. So I'm going to put it really, really simply. All sea turtles, terrapins, turtles, and tortoises are turtles. They are all from the same order called Testudines. That order used to be known as Chelonia, which is why you might hear turtles referred to as chelonians. But now that order is called Testudines. So they all came from these common ancestors. But at some point, millions of years ago, tortoises split off into their own clade and evolved for a terrestrial lifestyle. So the most simple way to put it is that tortoises are evolved for a terrestrial lifestyle, while turtles are evolved for aquatic, semi-aquatic, and in many other cases, terrestrial lifestyles.
Okay, great.
Good question.
The next question is, can animals like trident be successfully returned to the wild?
They absolutely can, but it is a very, very time-consuming, scientifically driven process. So again, Trident he was confiscated at JFK Airport. He originally came from Oklahoma. I'm so glad this question came up because it's a great plug. So the Turtle Survival Alliance is host to what's called the AZA SAFE, or Association of Zoos and Aquariums Saving Animals from Extinction American Turtle Program. And the goal of that program is to create pathways from confiscation to conservation. And so what that means is being able to develop pathways for turtles to go back to their native range, or if they can't go back to their native range, to be used for other conservation purposes, which may be conservation breeding, which may be education and outreach. So there are different vehicles that we can use, so to speak, to be able to use these confiscated turtles like Trident. But it's not a simple process. I would never get in the car with Trident and just drive to Oklahoma, find a patch of forest, and release him. Because going back to the whole thing, turtles have site fidelity. There's a lot involved with being able to repatriate turtles back on the landscape that are from confiscations. One, we have to do disease screening. A lot of times these animals pick up various diseases while they are being transported. And some of those diseases are very contagious, and they're also very detrimental to wild populations. The disease that really comes to mind is called ranavirus. And while wild populations of turtles and tortoises do have ranavirus, they also have mycoplasma, they also have herpes virus. When a turtle is introduced to a population, you could be bringing that disease into the population that didn't have that disease before. But we don't want to just consider all diseases as inhibitors to turtles going back to the wild. Think about if we did that for humans. Every human would live indoors for their entire life. You know, we humans, I mean, we have all sorts of pathogens that we pass. This is the season right now in which, you know, people are getting the flu, people are getting the common cold. There's also different types of SARS viruses. COVID virus is a SARS virus. Um, so does that mean that humans can't walk amongst each other in populated areas? Does that mean we can't go to school or work? No. It's just important to understand what diseases there are out there so that you can actually do what's basically disease matchmaking. Okay, this turtle has mycoplasma, which causes pneumonia. Well, if we test the population where it's going to be released into and find out, oh, well, they already have mycoplasma too, well, then that turtle might be a fit to go into that population. But there's another thing, and it's called genetics. Think about the evolution of turtles and tortoises. They've evolved for millions of years. They have created genetic lineages that have traits that make them be able to optimally survive in certain areas. So one box turtle's trait might have it so that they are able to survive the harsh winters of upstate New York, while that trait might not do so well if it was released into the hot, steamy southeastern Georgia, for instance. So it's important that we look at the genetics of these animals. And then lastly, what we want to do is be able to release these animals into habitats that we know are not going to get developed, protected habitats. And then when we do release them into those habitats, we want to release them into what's called soft release environments. So what we do is we build massive enclosures, pens into the forest where we're going to release the turtles, put them in there for about 6 months to a year, and then we pull up the walls of the pen and allow the turtle to naturally um, uh, disperse into the woodland. So I know that was a really long answer, but that just shows how complicated it is. It is a complicated process to take a turtle confiscated from wildlife trade and get it back into the wild. But that doesn't mean we're not doing it. We are actively doing it, and there are many examples where this has already been successfully implemented. So great question. Sorry that I went on such a diatribe about it, but I really wanted to give you the full picture.
No,
I
that's
know that you're like, that just used up all your time, Jordan. Way to go.
no, it's
No,
fine.
it's fine. Another question is, what was the reason you wanted to join the Turtle Survivor Alliance, and what made you want to do research on turtles?
Why wouldn't I want to do something else? That's the question. No, so I mean, I've loved turtles ever since I was a kid, growing up in the woods of upstate New York. I after my education, I was a biology instructor at a university. Then I was a zookeeper at the Houston Zoo in Texas, and then I got offered the job with Turtle Survival Alliance. And that, I mean, for me being a turtle nerd, like I can't turn that down, right? That's the dream job for turtle nerds, is being able to work for the world's best and largest turtle conservation organization. So yippee, sign me on the dotted line. Let's work with turtles every day. So yeah, so now I've been here for 8 years. Again, yeah, as you all said, it's my 8 year anniversary today, and turtles are just what I love. Why does anybody love anything? It's just something that's ingrained in us, whether that be through nurture or nature, terms you might have heard to describe our growth as humans. Um, I've always loved turtles. Being able to get out into the environments where turtles live is so important to me. So I just showed you turtles that live in captivity as outreach ambassadors. But I'm going to tell you this right now. I can see these turtles every day in my backyard in the habitats they live in. Does not compare to seeing one in the wild. I mean, I have turtles that I see every single day that I will spend hours and days looking for in the wild just to see them, just to see that wild animal, because it is an irreplaceable experience. And then also the habitats that they live in, like the Steve the wood turtle. I get to go do research in crystal clear water on beautiful spring days or fall days where you have golden foliage in the trees. And it's like, for a turtle, again, I use the term turtle nerd. If you're a turtle lover and somebody calls you a turtle nerd, by the way, that's a term of an affection. Like, embrace it. For a turtle nerd like me, that's heaven being in those kind of environments. So, good question.
Okay, thank you. Another question is, would you like to know we would like to know what your favorite species is?
Oh, I can't have these turtles overhearing what I say. They'll develop a complex. No, so Steve the wood turtle. I love wood turtles. I love spotted turtles, box turtles, diamondback terrapins. The large riverine turtles of Asia, called the roof turtles and river terrapins, are huge favorites of mine. It's hard to pick a favorite, and a lot of it depends on the season. So, in the wintertime, where I live in the deep south, that's spotted turtle season. In the springtime, when I go up to Virginia, that's wood turtle season. During the summertime, when diamondback terrapins are nesting, that's diamondback terrapin season. So I kind of get to have a favorite turtle based on what season it is.
That's nice. Someone else asked, do baby turtles try and look for their mothers like sea turtles do, or are babies just surviving on their own once they out of the ground?
Excellent question. All right. For the most part, when a baby turtle hatches, crawls out into the world, that's it. It's on its own. You're talking about an animal with 260 million years of evolution. They are ready to go. They are what's called precocial from the outset. They can find their own food. They can find water. They can avoid predators. They can look for environments that are optimal for them to live in. But there's been some really cool research done by a friend and colleague of mine in the Brazilian Amazon, studying this turtle called the giant South American river turtle. And remember, a few minutes ago, I was talking about turtle communication, actually making sounds to each other. What they have been able to find in their research is that when the hatchlings come out of the sandy nesting beaches along these rivers in the Amazon, the female turtles in the river will actually audibly communicate to the hatchlings as they make their way into the river. And they've been able to demonstrate that the females will lead the hatchlings towards safer areas of the river for them to grow and find food. There's so much we're still finding out about turtles. I mean, a friend of mine, Gabriel Georgievich Cohen, is doing all this fascinating research on turtle communication, and it is starting to provide us more answers to that exact question of, do turtles actually, is there more parental care involved? Do turtles seek out other members of their species using audible communication? It's all fascinating.
That's awesome. That's really interesting. The next question is from Kaylee, and she is wondering if baby turtles are born with their shells.
Kaylee, excellent question, because I get that all the time. There's a lot of people who think that turtles can come out of their shell and move into a new shell like a hermit crab. But a turtle's shell is its body. That shell is grown within the egg. It is actually an extension of their backbone and their rib cage. So if you think about us, okay, we have our spine, we have our rib cage. What a turtle shell is outer fusings of the spine and the rib cage that we call a shell. and they develop that in the egg. And then after they hatch, when they start absorbing ultraviolet rays, when they start eating nutritious foods, they're able to start calcifying that bone into the hard shell that we know turtles to have. Now, yes, there are also a whole group of turtles called soft shell turtles that do have a rather flexible shell. But when we talk about turtles, simple answer, yes. They are born with their shell and they grow with their shell. That shell is the turtle. The turtle is its shell.
The next question is it true that turtles are slow? If not, what is the maximum speed that they can reach?
Oh, all right. So, sure, there's some turtles that are slow. I mean, they just plod along, just looking at the scenery, doing quantum mechanics in their head, thinking deep thoughts about what they read in the newspaper that morning. No, turtles are they're animals that have a vast range of movement capabilities. The fastest turtle on Earth is the leatherback sea turtle. It's not only the largest turtle on Earth, but it's also the fastest. Leatherback sea turtles can swim at about 25, 30 miles per hour. So that is quite fast. Not only that, they can dive more than 4,000 feet deep in the ocean. That's crazy. Like, think of a turtle diving more than 4,000 feet deep. There's some turtles like Spike Magoo, the yellow blotch map turtle. They are so fast. They live again in these pretty fast moving rivers. And they, with that spiked keel, you remember he had this saw-shaped shell. Holy moly, that's a tongue twister. Saw-shaped shell. Well, that acts as a keel, and they can just cut right through the water along with their webbed feet. I have gone into the rivers of Mississippi diving in off of logs to try to catch those turtles, and they're really, really hard. Soft-shell turtles, holy moly, they're fast. Not only underwater, but if you've ever had the pleasure of seeing a soft-shell turtle scramble across land, like, you never knew turtles could move so fast. It's really cool. So, turtles can be slow, yes. They can be fast. They can also just say, "Hey, I'm going to sit here all day and just think about things."
Okay, that's pretty fun and interesting. Um, Andrew would like to know how we can help prevent turtle extinction, especially if we are not near water.
So, going back to I know it's a long time ago now, but turtles live all over the world. Again, there's 479 different types of turtle, tortoise, terrapin, and sea turtle. So you don't have to live near water to help turtles. There's turtles that live in extraordinarily dry deserts. The desert tortoise here in the United States lives in the deserts of Arizona, New Mexico, California, Nevada. There's a tortoise that lives all the way down in Patagonia, in Argentina, in extremely dry desert. There's tortoises that live in the deserts of Pakistan, Azerbaijan, Turkmenistan. There's turtles. So to get to the point, there's turtles everywhere. So how can you help them? One, you can reach out to me at Turtle Survival Alliance. So we love taking questions. We love being able to use our vast global network to put people in touch with other people to get involved. So no matter where you are on Earth, maybe there's a turtle conservation project near you. And I know that I would love to help people get involved if they can. So that might be a local nature center. There might be a program that's based out of a forest preserve or based out of a zoo or turtle monitoring along a beach. Lots of different avenues to get involved is just being able to find them and connect with the right people. That's what I did from an early age. Again, I've been a turtle nerd since I was young. I started volunteering by the time at fourth grade. After school, I went and volunteered taking care of turtles and other animals at a wildlife center. So there's ways to get involved, and we'd love to help.
Thank you for that. Caleb asked, if you weren't to study turtles, what would you do instead?
Well, let's see. My failed career as a professional hockey player has gone by, so I guess I could go try out for the Chicago Blackhawks, but I think I'm going to have a pretty tough time out there on the ice. No, I mean, if I wasn't doing turtle conservation, what would I do? You know what I love? Salamanders. I really love salamanders. They're another animal that, I mean, winter nights, I'll go out on just pouring rain nights in the 40s looking for breeding salamanders. Um, but no, I mean, there's a lot of interest that I've always held. I kind of keep my toes in different things, but I'll just be honest. I cannot imagine a life outside of turtle conservation. That's just what I do. It's who I am. So, uh, Chicago Blackhawks, if any of you are watching right now, any of the scouts, don't worry. I'm not going to show up on to the training camp. Okay, I'm not going to embarrass myself.
Oh, that's funny.
That's good to know. Another user attendee asked, what are turtle shells made of?
All right, so the shell itself is made of bone, just like the bones we have in our body. And then the outside of the shell, for many species of turtles, are covered in keratin. These plates we call scutes that's made of keratin. So again, the same thing as our fingernails, our skin, our hair. Um, but then we have like the soft shell turtles. So they have a bony shell underneath, and then they are covered in a thick layer of skin that gives them that soft texture and kind of flappy mobility and appearance.
I know you kind of answered this already, but Nick is wondering if you like any other animals besides turtles.
No, I don't like any other animals. Yeah, of course I love other animals. Gosh, big cats, like snow leopards. A friend of mine who was visiting from she does work in Nepal and northern India. Um, she and I were talking about it. Like, if I could see a snow leopard in the wild, that would be such a dream come true. I love big cats. Um, of course, we already talked about salamanders. I mean, I'm just a wildlife lover. Like, I love going birding. I love looking at birds, doing bird counts. Um, I've worked with otters. I've worked with beavers. I mean, there's so many different types of animals I've actually gotten the pleasure to work with. Just turtles are they're my fave.
Turtles are great. I can't
Yeah.
blame you.
Rhinoceroses. Have you all ever been up close and personal with a rhinoceros?
No.
Oh my gosh, they're so cool. They're so cool. So really, I mean, I just love animals.
I love, yeah, animals are so interesting, especially in like environments and stuff. Um, Someone asked, if turtles are removed from their environment, do they have migration instinct like birds?
They They do. All right. So there's been a lot of research done on this. So birds, cetaceans like whales and dolphins, and other wildlife have these migratory patterns that have been established over thousands or millions of years. Um, but how do they keep traveling the same path? How do they keep going to the exact same location year after year? There has to be more than just visual cues, because maybe it's you're looking at the stars. Well, what if it's overcast for weeks at a time? How are you still following the stars? That'd be pretty hard if you can't see them. So the Earth has magnetic lines, and there are types of animals that are able to basically uh, geolocate. They're able to tap into that magnetic field that the Earth has to be able to travel. Um, to be able to do that, however, the animal needs to have this compound called magnetite. So magnetite, for most of these animals, it can be found. I mean, it doesn't have to be like a plate in your brain, like it's a metal plate. It's magnetite, and you're hooked up to a satellite. Just these very very minute amounts of magnetite somewhere in the brain that is able to excuse me, so that the animal is able to geolocate using the magnetic field of the earth. And yes, we have seen turtles where they've like I talked about before, they're released here, and then somehow they travel back to their home range, um, but they haven't ever done that route before. So how did they make that trek and get right back home without ever having traveled there before? I know humans couldn't do it. Humans are kind of pathetic, right? Like if we didn't have maps, if we didn't have phones, we would just wander aimlessly in the woods and run into trees and fall off cliffs. Okay? Uh, Turtles and tortoises, other animals, they have this amazing homing ability. I've seen it. I've seen it in person. I've seen turtles not only go travel back to their home, but we're talking about like 2 feet from where I originally found them, after traveling miles. So it's incredible. It's really. Can you tell I get excited about this stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
But we
that's
can blame
good.
you.
That's good. You like your profession. Someone else asked, how fast can they repair their shells?
It really depends. A lot of that has to do with temperature because they are ectotherms or cold-blooded animals. So when we do shell repair, we try to keep the animal at an optimal metabolic temperature of about 85 degrees. That's where the physiological processes are happening at their highest rate, for these animals. If the animal lives in a cold climate, it might take the animal longer to heal. But then there's also other factors. Did the animal then get an infection, and so it has to use resources from its body to fight the infection rather than put those resources towards healing? Is the animal still able to get nutrients in so that they're able to be able to fuel those metabolic processes such that they can heal? Let me tell you about the craziest thing I ever saw. So there's this little musk turtle called a common musk turtle, also known as the stink pot. The turtle was normal size, normal weight, otherwise completely healthy. It was missing its face. Its whole entire front of its head was gone. And yet it just was going about like a normal turtle. So somehow this turtle managed to be able to basically intake water, to take in probably algae and plankton and maybe small invertebrates to be able to sustain itself. And it was completely healed. This wasn't a new injury. It was a completely healed, only half of its head. Like, turtles are amazing. It's crazy.
That is the
That's-
craziest thing I've ever heard. I've
Yeah,
never heard of
That's
that.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, Yashil, probably butchered that, my bad. Asks, can you take a shell off a turtle without harming the turtle?
No. So because the turtle's shell is its body, it is its bones, it's connected to its skin. In fact, a turtle's organs are suspended from the top of its shell. So if you were to take the shell off of a turtle, it would, in most scenarios, die. I have seen turtles who have lost most of their shell, been able to repair it, and they then have a kind of a pseudo shell made of scar tissue. But in most cases, that animal is not going to live.
That's good to know.
The more I answer these things, I've seen some crazy stuff with turtles.
Next question is, in the wild, what do the turtles eat and do to survive, especially if they are in a habitat they are not familiar with?
So turtles eat a whole wide range of items. Some turtles are primarily carnivorous, so they feed on animal matter, meat. Some are primarily vegetarians, so they feed on plant matter. And then others, and this is actually the majority of turtles, are omnivores. So even a terrestrial, let's take a tortoise who is primarily vegetarian, an herbivore. Well, if they come across a carcass of an animal, imagine a tortoise just plodding along out on the savanna of Africa. If they find a dead gazelle, for instance, that herbivorous tortoise uh, most likely is going to take advantage of that additional protein source and dine on that animal. Um, Highly carnivorous species will also conversely oftentimes eat plant matter to be able to get other nutrients. So it really depends on the species, and then not just the species, but the habitat the species lives in. There's a turtle called the diamondback terrapin that lives along the coastline of the United States from Texas to Massachusetts. And in one part of their range, for instance, the favorite food item might be mussels or clams. One state away, the favorite food item might be fiddler crabs. 100 miles away, the favorite food item might be snails. So it really is not just by species, but by where that species lives. So then to answer the other part of the question, if that animal is in a foreign habitat, they're going to likely be as opportunistic as possible. If they're highly stressed, they might not want to eat, however. I mean, hey, humans can be the same way. If we're in a stressful environment, we might not have a big appetite. But for the most part, when a turtle is removed and in a new environment, they're likely going to be as opportunistic as possible or searching out food items that are at least similar to their preferred items from where they came from. Good question.
Okay, the next question is, the fifth grade goats are wondering if the turtles you presented are all your pets, or are they from your organization, and where do they all come from?
So the turtles that I have here, they do live with me. They live in large outdoor naturalistic environments. Do I consider them pets? Not necessarily. All of these are uh, ambassador animals. Okay, so that's uh, uh, I want to put it like I probably wouldn't have many of these turtles just because I wanted to get a pet turtle and I wanted that turtle. All of these turtles, as demonstrated going through them today, have their own story. They have their own purpose in being able to relay conservation messages, whether that be through watching for turtles crossing the road, or reasons why turtles are critically endangered, or just the ability of turtles showing how they can heal, like Steve missing his front legs. So they do all live with me. They all came from various different sources. A lot of times these animals they're rehabbed, and so they came to me for use in Turtle Survival Alliance educational programming. And then I also do educational programming with the Georgia Southern University. Or like with Trident, they come from confiscations, whether that's federal or state confiscations, because they know that I'll be able to provide them with the proper environments for them to be able to thrive.
That's very good and interesting to know. Paul would like to know if turtles can get sick from drinking dirty water.
Can they get sick from drinking dirty water? So, as an overall statement, I'll say no. But then again, it's, what is clean to us versus what's clean to a turtle. Now, are there pathogens in that water, however? That is a major way that animals spread diseases to each other, is through droplets in water, or the pathogen being in water, in drinking water. So uh, if there's a population of box turtles that are drinking from a water source and they have that very contagious pathogen called ranavirus, and another box turtle comes in, it could get ranavirus from being exposed to that water. But turtles live in all sorts of habitats. They live in, absolutely muddy rivers that we wouldn't consider that clean water, but that's fine for the turtles. They might encounter drying up pools in the African savanna that wildebeest and elephants and lions and all these other type of animals have all used as a communal drinking hole. That water is probably pretty dirty by that point, but for the turtles it's okay. So that's kind of my answer there.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. It was amazing learning about all the different turtles. It was amazing seeing them. They're adorable.
Yeah. Sadly, we have
Thank you.
another
Yeah, thank
time.
you so much. I always appreciate being on the National Biodiversity Teach-In. Again, if I assume that many people watching are tuned into social media, so whether that be Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, please check us out at Turtle Survival, or just type in Turtle Survival Alliance. We update our social media regularly. We update our website regularly. And if you want to get more involved, please send me an email. I know the organizers of the NBTI would be happy to provide my email for anybody who wants to reach out and learn more. So thank you again from all the turtles. I know they thank you, though they're probably happy to get back out into their outdoor habitats right after we log off.
Okay. Thank you so much.